Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. It is probably the most exciting time for doing this job because we have the Whispers of N'Zoth. Not of some random talking tree or a talking knife, the Whispers of N'Zoth himself, which is pretty cool. Now this video is somewhat part 2 of the last lore video that I did, in which I cover how we receive the gift of N'Zoth, and I know that's pretty crazy, but with all that in mind, let's talk about these new Whispers of N'Zoth, how they tie into the existing Old God mysteries, and what it could all mean for the future of the game.
Wanes. His crown will open the way.
Okay, so this line can go in multiple different directions, really cool ones, but we're going to start with the really big one, the Lich King. The crown could easily refer to the Lich King's helm, the Helm of Domination. Now, the Lich King has been increasingly active in the recent story, with Horde players actually giving him a visit in patch 8.1 in their attempts to work out just who whispered to Vol'jin. Now, Bolvar is of course himself becoming more active, but he hasn't actually got out of his throne yet. He's still technically in the melding period, but not for that long. You see, the melding, I believe, is supposed to take about 5 years if Arthas is anything to go by. Now, Wrath took place in year 26, or year 28 even, with ICC probably happening in the back half of year 28. Now, right now, it's year 33, which is 5 years after Bolvar put on the helm. Well, 5 years of in-game time, of course, for us, it's been 10 years. Doesn't aging suck? So, Bolvar is probably going to be getting up off the throne soon. And that's really good timing because death is a more important part of the story. His daughter was introduced, of course, in the game with Talia, and of course, Arthas' sister, Kalia Menethil, is playing a very major role in the game. Now, what about this veil? The line speaks of the veil waning. It's hard to tell. This could be the veil between life and death, between the material plane and the Shadowlands. After all, seeing into the Shadowlands seems to be quite difficult because we have to remember, as an example, Odin made a bargain with the Shadowlands spirit and he gave up his eye to be able to see into it. So that's really my read on the Lich King, but there's a lot more. Magni Bronzebeard. Of course, he's the speaker for Azeroth, but if you look at his model closely, he's wearing a crown. And this means the line could be referring to him. Now, the line says, when the veil wanes, the crown will open the way. What if Magni was corrupted, maybe as a byproduct of Azeroth's increasing corruption? We also, of course, have the line, the King of Diamonds has been made a pawn. Well, now we have more lines pointing at Magni. Of course, if he was to do ill, he probably would not know. His connection to Azeroth is extremely close, perhaps too close for him to resist her being corrupted. Now, as for the crown opening the way, well, I have speculated about how we may not be doing good with the Heart of Azeroth right now. Her heart is a crater. We have filled it. Of course, that video has already been made in the channel. Now, there is also the line,
He gave himself to the deep places. He gave himself to me.
again, certainly could fit Magni. Now, there is another read about this. The crown could, of course, be referring to the Crown of Stormwind, and indeed, if you look at the King of Diamonds line, well, the King of Diamonds is actually a tarot card of a fair-haired, handsome young prince. So the crown could be referring to the leadership of Stormwind. As for this crown opening the way, well, if there's some deep corruption that has not been, is yet to be revealed, it could make sense. Additionally, there is obviously room for the Alliance to do something properly bad for a change. It does seem mightily unlikely now, but, unless Blizzard literally do want the Horde to be the villain of much of this expansion, they are going to have to do something to balance that out. An Alliance war crime that could have unintended consequences, that could certainly kick off something bad for all, and open the way to something a little bit more evil. Additionally, we also have Il'gynoth's big lines, the Boy King telling 3 lies. Well, Sylvanas does say the Boy King has lied to himself and his people, which again opens up, more lines pointing towards something odd about Anduin. Of course, that lie being Anduin saying that essentially we have the Horde dead to rights and we just need to finish the job. Now, of course, it seems like Sylvanas might actually have a new super weapon, which would of course render Anduin saying that pretty much, wrong, much to his eventual chagrin. But that's what's up with that. Let's move on to the next line.
6 seats at the high table. 6 mouths that hunger. 1 will consume all others.
And yeah, this is a really nice one. I think it's quite clearly the cosmic forces, of which there are 6, with light and void being the original 2, then arcane and fel, and then finally life and death, which seem to be the youngest of the cosmic forces. So that's 6. Now the table is a metaphor, perhaps resembling how the universe exists because of the balance between all of them. Now these forces all seem to have sentient representatives: the Naaru, the Void Lords, the demons, the Titans. As for life and death, well, they're a bit more challenging. They seem to both be embodied in the Titans. Now, we do know the there's a death entity who is Bwonsamdi's boss. We don't actually know who that really is. And then I suppose we also have Elune, a big cosmic entity. We don't exactly know her real nature. At the very least, life and death are the least explained of the forces as compared to the others. Now, what about one force consuming the others, as this line suggests? Well, given that N'Zoth says this, he's likely referring to death. Now, death is kind of a stand-in for entropy. Indeed, just look at Blizzard's description of death from Chronicle. Death in the form of necromantic magic acts as a counterbalance to life. It is an unavoidable force that breeds despair in mortal hearts and pushes everything towards a state of entropic decay and eventual oblivion. So yeah, that description really does sound like the one force that could consume all others. Now, of course, the line is said by N'Zoth, being a void-aligned being. Well, it would kind of make sense. I mean, just look at how the Void Whispers within Illyria reacted to Sylvanas and death. So yeah, we're all doomed. Let's move on, though.
The light has struck a bargain with the enemy of all.
The enemy of all. Well, again, this line is said by N'Zoth, and if you think about the previous line that we just covered, again, pretty safe to say it's talking about death. Now, we see the light raise Calia Menethil as an undead, and everyone is amazed when it happens because it should not have happened. It's not established. She, was not raised to undeath through necromantic magic. She was raised with the light. In a way, we kind of see light and death working together there. Now, that is something that could upset the cosmic balance of the forces. Now, light and void are the 2 most fundamental forces. They've been there since the very beginning, and the universe exists because of the balance between the 2. If light were to embrace undeath in its fanatical opposition to the void, then that would upset the balance, and that would be greatly alarming to the void. I think it's worth noting that the entities of death broadly seem benevolent. Well, okay, bar maybe Muzala and Helya, but Bwonsamdi doesn't seem particularly evil. Of course he has a boss. We don't know anything about that boss or what they are like, but it could just be that it's not really fundamentally against the light and it's just a natural function of things. After all, the undead in the game can wield the light. So perhaps N'Zoth is, afraid of the forces of death, and that because of this, he wants to turn us against it. Now that is very much in line with our war with Sylvanas, and indeed it's also in line with Anduin's opinion that she is beyond saving and must be stopped. So yeah, it's very messy overall, and it's pretty damn clear if they're playing into some sort of plan. But of course, this line really hammers in on that.
With every choice, you become more my servant.
Yeah, it's another pretty interesting one because when you think about it, it's really hard to argue against. First, it's very true for loyal Sylvanas, Horde follower or Horde players. It seems like this is entirely what N'Zoth wants. Now, it could be that he'll miscalculate Sylvanas and he'll find himself being trapped by the Black Blade or something, or her being, powerful beyond his calculation. But on a basic level, her aggressive war, with next to no chance for peace, that's exactly what he would want. As for the Alliance players and Saurfang's friends, it still could be true. I mean, you can see the Alliance blind in their righteousness, thinking that the ends justify the means and calculating terrible crimes that will have consequences. Even past this, though, we've still been really helpful. We introduced the Void into the heart of the Emerald Dream. Now, as I covered, the Emerald Dream is basically a formalized construction of the dreaming mind of Azeroth the World Soul. Now, does that mean that introducing the Void into the very heart of the dream, as Cenarius says in that location, that really introduces the Void to the heart of the World Soul? At the very least, I think we know something is brewing there. Blizzard were very clear. I mean, hell, N'Zoth might even have been involved with the AU Archimonde stuff. At the very least, we know there's a connection there for sure. And again, check out my video from a while back in that one. It sounds crazy, but it actually seems to be real. Now, we defeated the Burning Legion. Remember, the Burning Legion exists for the express purpose of preventing the Void Lords from winning, even if it means snuffing out life and, denying them world souls by destroying them in a galaxy-wide scorched Earth crusade. Well, with the Legion dealt with, there's nothing to stand against the Void. We Azerothian people are pretty much special forces. We're not an endless demon army whose troops automatically resurrect. Then in 8.1.5 we release Alatath, who, through us, is able to awaken N'Zoth. That's a bit of a whoops on us. I'm sure there are even more instances of how we've helped out N'Zoth, and it seems like he has a sort of Lich King-like strategy to, use us and eventually turn us to his side as big, brave champions, just that maybe this time there won't be a big ice cube to save us.
The fall of night reveals her true face. She will bring only ruin.
Okay, so this is, I'd say, one of my favorite ones here. What did we just see in-game? The dark side of Elune. Will she bring only ruin? Well, the power that she's granted to Tyrande is absolutely destructive. Most of the Night Elves seem to regard it as a very high-risk maneuver. I've long speculated about Elune, of course, and hell, it's probably a good idea for a future deep dive, lore video, like, is Elune a rogue Void Lord? Just look at the Naru and how they turn to Void. Compare that to what we just saw with Elune in, Darkshore. Perhaps she's a light Void Lord or something. Perhaps she's an entity of life and death. We really don't know what she is for sure, but what we do know is that Blizzard are continually teasing there to be something there. Really starting off with the Legion lore suggesting that she created the Prime Naru, which would kind of suggest that she's some sort of Light Lord. Now, the line could also refer to Tyrande, but for my money, it's on Elune, and I think that's Blizzard trying to expand her mystery box for future stories.
When the arrow finds its mark, the last fetter will fall away.
Okay, so with this one first, a fetter is a leg restraint. So when the arrow hits its mark, the final restraint will fall away. What could that restraint be? Well, a very simple answer could be N'Zoth's prison, but it's also possible that it's just something that we don't really know about yet, but will understand after the lore of 8.2 and 8.3. Now, who uses arrows? Well, Tyrande does. Of course, she now embodies vengeance after the Night Warrior ritual. How far will the whole thing go? Well, you could read this as Tyrande being, or you could read it as Tyrande being the mortal avatar of Elune. Blizzard are big into consequences of actions, and it seems like, Tyrande will boot the Forsaken out of Darkshore, but that there will be a price to pay for that. Now, Sylvanas and Illyria also use arrows, and we do know that N'Zoth could easily whisper to Illyria, and it seems to be that he can manipulate the Blade of the Black Empire, and that is obviously in Sylvanas' hands. So for the most part, I'm pretty much thinking here that our mortal characters, through the power that they will get, and through some sort of big action, will be responsible for fully unleashing N'Zoth, or something like that.
Receive my gift and see all truths before you.
Okay, so this one is really clear, but it's just worth flagging up that players receive the gift of N'Zoth in the next patch. It gives them a third eye, and it lets them see who else has the gift of N'Zoth. Now, additionally, I speculate that it would allow N'Zoth to see through the eye, and that in the process, he'd be able to gather info on us. What are these truths, though? Well, remember that N'Zoth says this to us, and then he gives us the gift. Now, that means, I think, that he's priming us to think that whatever we see through the eye will be truth, when in reality, it's probably a trick. I think it's another, manipulation. And that I suppose because of that, Blizzard will probably try to show players with the gift of N'Zoth bits of misinformation to purposefully muddle up the lore and have a little bit of fun, play with player expectations, and who knows what the consequences will be, but I'm pretty sure that's kind of what they'll be playing with there. But yeah, there we go. That is the, I'd say, major lines covered, but there are a few more that I'd really like to flag up.
Let the tides draw you into my dream.
Yeah, so Dream. That kind of makes me think of, the dreamlike world that Ashara saw. Kind of makes me hope we'll get some, insane Lovecraftian hellscape full of, non-Euclidean geometry madness. So yeah, pretty cool imagery that definitely gets me hyped for the future.
I alone can save you from what is to come.
Yeah, so this is a pretty crazy one. How's N'Zoth saving us? What is to come? We don't know. Is this referring to the awakening of Elune? It doesn't seem like N'Zoth would like her too much if we're reading in between the lines here. It's very clear that N'Zoth is making a fear-based argument to join him against something. In that case, it could be perhaps death. The Void hates death, and perhaps the Void Lords may not be the only ultimate evil out there. Perhaps there is something representing death that even the Void is afraid of, which would be kind of spooky and cool.
He grows hungrier, bolder. Alas, your eyes are closed.
So yeah, with this one, I mean, growing, getting bolder. Is death growing hungrier? I mean, it's now worked with the light. That's new. There's clearly more death going on everywhere. Again, this is clearly the old gods trying to pitch death as their big villain to get us on board. But again, I think it is more teasing that there is something else that the old gods are in opposition to.
That which was sunken shall rise.
Yep, this one is pretty damn clear. Nazjatar, Ny'alotha. And I'm really excited. I think we are going to be just going to absolutely crazy places that we've not seen before, and probably getting new stuff for the game that feels fresh. I mean, yeah, we're in a tricky spot right now, but it seems kind of exciting for the future, to be honest.
All that was sleeping shall be awakened.
I mean, yeah, just think of your favorite metal cover, right? Ancient Horrors and Ny'alotha, stuff that's been in stasis since the end of the, Black Empire. Of course, Ny'alotha's not a confirmed patch, but the idea of the Black Empire rising again, they keep on teasing it. It seems really hard to resist. And if they do it, yeah, it'll be metal as all hell. I'll keep it advertiser friendly, which is all super exciting to me. I love the old god stuff, and I mean, yeah, just Blizzard fully embracing that as a patch would be great, because we actually haven't really had that much. We have had patches where we fought old gods, but it's mainly been through a Titan lens, right? Going into a Titan prison where there is an old god. But what if Black Empire rises up and we're fighting old gods in their home turf? We get to see what their tile sets look like. It's not, it's not a corrupted version of a Titan area. It's an actual old god, their own area. I think that would all be really, really cool. Which is why I'm kind of really excited to get away from the faction war and get over to this stuff, because, yeah, I mean, Blizzard, when they do well, it is big and cheesy and fun. It is the metal cover, the metal album cover equivalent of storytelling. It's not, it's not high art, but it's really fun, and I think that's probably what people want more from WoW than the other stuff. So, yeah, kind of excited for the future. Let me know what you think. That is what is up with our new big tasty set of Old God Whispers. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.